Good morning. Welcome to Coffee Cup Conversations. Today is Monday, March 29th, and I'm so happy to be with you this morning. So happy spring. I hope this week has some special things in store. So I just wanted to share a few words with you this morning. Hopefully they'll be an encouragement. And I'll start off with my mug. I picked this one because it's just kind of plain and dark. On this side, it does say Cultivate Coffee, which is the logo of a coffee shop that my nephew Peter Nielsen helped start and begin. And I love the word cultivate because it makes me think about soil. And definitely this time of the year with this new season and things are starting to bloom and bud, dirt is an important part of that process. So the other day I was out in my back porch area in this little room, and I have a lot of my houseplants back there. But last spring I had received a couple spring flowers, and they were bulb plants. And so once they were done blooming and I enjoyed those, I cut those off and I just put the pot by itself. I had two of them, put it on the back porch on the floor. And I thought when I get a minute, I'll plant them somewhere outside. Well, I never got around to it, so they just sat there kind of in the corner. And I was watering some other flowers, and I looked over, and lo and behold, I saw some new life shooting out of this pretty dark soil. I hadn't done anything to this. I was just sitting there, no watering of these bulbs or anything, but they knew it was time to spring forth with new life. And so I was so inspired by that. I was excited. I've enjoyed watching them the last few days and just seeing the progress that they're making. And it just made me think about times in our life when we kind of feel like we're buried under or that it's just so dark and we just can't seem to see the light in our circumstance, or maybe in kind of a feeling of some depression or just feeling overwhelmed with life. I came across a little saying by Christine Caine, and it says, sometimes when you're in a dark place, you think you've been buried, but you've actually been planted. And so just like those bulbs, I forgot all about them. They were buried, really, but at the right time, they shot up and they're going to produce flowers, and we'll get a whole nother cycle and enjoyment from them. And so in life, I feel like definitely God is at work. Even when we're buried, He is at work. He wants to use this dark times in our lives, not to do us in, but to help us press into Him. And when we look back, we can realize that truly He was with us. I love the verses from Romans 8. And it's just talking about our present suffering. And we can't even compare it to what we will, with the glory that is going to be revealed to us. And so it just talks about how even creation is groaning and is reminding us of this waiting time until we actually are brought into the glorious freedom that God has for us as His children. And so it says, verse 22 says, we know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what he already has? But if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently. In the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groans that words cannot express. And He who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints in accordance with God's will. So maybe today you don't even have words to say for your situation or your circumstance, but know that God's Spirit that lives in you is actually interceding on your behalf. And we can take hope in that. We can trust him in that. And here we are in the Passion Week leading up to Easter. And I was thinking of some other cups that Jesus held. He held the cup with communion with his disciples as they ate and drank in remembrance of him. They weren't quite getting the whole idea of what was happening. But I also thought about a time that Jesus was in a very dark place. And I took comfort from it, and I hope it brings comfort to you. So he's in the Garden of Gethsemane with his disciples, and he asks them to pray for him. Sit here, stay awake, and pray. And we know that the disciples kept falling asleep. But here are some of the words that Jesus expressed to his Father in heaven. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. This is what he was saying to the disciples. Stay here and keep watch with me. So then he goes on, and it says he fell with his face to the ground, and he prayed, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Jesus was in anguish. He was in a very dark place. And it's a comfort. I've always found that so comforting to know that Jesus really understands when I'm mourning, when I'm just so overwhelmed with the heavy circumstances in my life. It's nothing in comparison to what Jesus went through, but he understands emotional pain and anguish. And then he prayed again in verse 42, my Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. And so he still trusted his Father, and he knew the physical anguish that he was heading towards once he was arrested and put on trial, and then the crucifixion. It was going to be difficult and so anguishing and so painful physically. But I think as we read this story, we can be encouraged as we know that Jesus understands our physical pain. He understands our emotional pain, and even the spiritual pain of not maybe understanding what God is doing, but choosing to trust that he is working for our good. So I hope this morning that you will be encouraged by these words, realizing that Jesus is with you. He understands what you're going through, and new life is coming. Growth is happening. Maybe it hasn't broken through the dark soil yet, but new life is coming. So press into Jesus, rest in his arms, allow the Holy Spirit to intercede on your behalf, and we will fix our eyes on the victory of Easter, new life, that Jesus conquered death and he conquered sin. And so it's through the great sacrifice that he made that we have new life. We have hope. And so I just pray a blessing over you this week as we celebrate. And thank you so much for just taking a few moments to join with me this morning. And I just pray God's blessing on you.